Welcome to another CBJ podcast. I'm your host today, Scott Rennak, and I am excited today to sit down with the guy that runs competition climbing in the United States. Marc Norman is the CEO of USA Climbing. And we get into a couple topics. We talk about the organization a little bit. We go deep on the National Training Center, talk about the Olympics. And hopefully it's a good time. You get to learn a couple things about how he looks at these issues and what's going on behind the scenes. So hope you enjoy the episode. Stay tuned. And before we get started, I need to take a minute to recognize our sponsors, without whose support these podcasts wouldn't be possible. Cascade Specialty. Since 1999, Cascade Specialty has installed and refurbished top quality flooring for both roped and bouldering areas. Learn more at cascadespecialty.com. Climbing Wall Association. CWA offers industry certifications, standards, events, and community connection, helping gyms stay informed and operate with clarity. Learn more at cwapro.org. Rooney. Out of Norway, Rooney makes chalk and apparel for climbers, inspired by YouTuber Magnus Mitbo. Learn more at rungne.com. Rock Gym Pro. Since 2008, Rock Gym Pro gym management software has powered climbing facilities across the globe. Learn more at rockgympro.com. Kilter. Designers of holds, macros, and the Kilter board, Kilter also provides adjustable walls and custom flooring. Learn more at settercloset.com. Hello, thank you for joining another CBJ podcast. I'm your host, Scott Rennak with Climbing Business Journal. And I am fortunate today to be sitting down with the CEO of USA Climbing, our national governing body. And I know Marc has really been busy. They just got over team trials and nationals and para-nationals and all this. So we really feel fortunate that you've set aside a little time to talk with us. Thanks for being here, Marc.
Thanks for having us, Scott. It's a pleasure to come on and talk about all things at USA Climbing and the National Training Center, of course.
Yeah, we'll dig into that and hopefully a couple of other topics that maybe don't have as much contentiousness. But for our listeners that are in the industry, route setters, coaches, gym managers that are really, they're kind of the insiders of this sport, and you rely on them as an organization. And so I think this is a great chance to really speak to them. And I'm sure some athletes and some parents are going to listen to this as well. But this is kind of a chance to really hone in and speak to this crowd that runs our sport and also runs USA Climbing events in a lot of levels. So try to frame it in that box. So, but before we get started on all the issues, could you just give us a little background? I know that you've been in the organization, the CEO now for 8 years. Is that you're in your 8th year, 9th year? So it's been a minute, and you've been through quite a lot. Where did you come from before this? Why were you the person that they hired 8 years ago? And where did you do before that?
Yeah, I appreciate it is always surprising to think it's been 8 years or a minute. It does actually, in some regards, feel like it's just been a minute. Yeah, I came on in kind of mid 2018. Previously, I'd spent 20 years at the Utah Olympic Legacy Foundation, where I was the last 8 years or so serving as the vice president of sport and venues, really overseeing daily operations of 3 Olympic venues, included all of the public activities, all of the sport programs. We had 300 employees under my side of the company with 9 reports and long-term capital planning, risk, insurance, you name it. It was a pretty broad role. I'd been in the role for quite some time and worked with national governing bodies in that, as part of my role in kind of the sports side of it. So I'd worked with a number of the winter federations, and even previously was a speed skating athlete. So kind of was familiar with national governing bodies, what they did, sometimes maybe in my opinion, maybe what they didn't do so well, what they did well, And it was unique and exciting in the sense of like being able to see so many national governing bodies at that level to then get an opportunity to be a really high performing NGB. So the funny side of the story is, I was originally intending to come on to the board of the organization. Had a meeting with a couple of the then board members, and it kind of came out that they were also going to be looking for a CEO. And I said, well, like that might be something I'm interested in. This is exciting. Like I loved climbing. I'd been a climber, since the early 90s, climbing in a little crag in Wisconsin, and been climbing ever since, and was like, wow, this is kind of cool. I could like help a sport that I love. And it's a place that I have really a lot of knowledge over the years working with so many national governing bodies in the USOPC, and what does it mean to be an Olympic sport, and what goes along with that. My wife's a 4-time Olympian. We're definitely an Olympic house. So it just seemed like everything for me, it was like perfect. So much so, another little funny story is I took the first interview, I think, for the position. I was actually at an international federation meeting in Spain. And I didn't want to do anything to like make it about like fit into my schedule. So it was like offered up at a time, and I was like, yeah, I can take it. Well, for me, it was 3 a.m. in Spain when I was taking that call. Again, just because I was like, this is awesome, and this is something I want to do. So a little bit of kind of how it came to be. Why they chose me? Well, I can't answer that question. Hopefully that experience was what won them over in that regard.
They knew we were headed to the Olympics, and you had some credit in that space.
Yeah.
So you were, a little sidebar, like you were behind and a big part of the scene in Salt Lake City when they hosted the Olympics. What was that, 04?
Yeah, 02. Yeah,
02.
I'm old. It's totally fine. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember I was in town during that time, and the whole buildings in downtown had these giant, like multi-story images of Olympians. And that was amazing.
That was a crazy time in Salt Lake. I wouldn't say I was a big part. I was a small part of a big organization at that time, really running kind of the field of play for the speed skating oval during the games. But then, afterwards is where I kind of stayed involved on the Olympic Legacy Foundation side, running the venues.
I'd say, I'm someone that came through the grassroots. I used to do running competitions back in the late 90s or early 2000s before USA Climbing existed. And I know there was always this push like, hey, we're going to be an Olympic sport. And so I think one of the things that held us back for a lot of time was that we didn't have someone that could like kind of guide us into that space. And so, I'd say in that sense, I think we're fortunate they found you in that moment. So not only the Olympics, of course, since you joined, we've been in 2 Olympic Games now, facing down this third one. And also we went through this pandemic, which was crazy. And I know that impacted the series and impacted the whole world. What have you, in the 8 years that you've been a part of it, like how have you seen things grow in this time already?
Yeah, it's a great question, and crazy to think back to pandemic times. Certainly never something that I don't know that anything can ever prepare you for that, whether it's USA Climbing or obviously the climbing gyms, which had a really difficult time through that time as well. It was a very strange time. Glad to be done with that. I think there are a lot of ways to kind of think about the 8 years. Internationally, I think you're seeing a significant rise in the level of our competitors, the level of investment in the sport. I'd say we're seeing that as maybe a challenge. It's great, I think, on one side, and a challenge on the other. That the majority of national federations around the world get governmental support. USA Climbing does not receive any governmental support. This is true of all national governing bodies in the U.S., so we're not unique here. We have to find ways to do it better, to be more efficient, and to support the athletes. That is much, much different than many of our peers. And with that Olympic sport, like you say, Tokyo, I think, started to see a little bit of that because it was Olympic, but then once Paris came along, more countries were getting involved and more support was occurring. And now with LA and the inclusion of para in LA, you're seeing that even more so. So that's not going to change. I don't ever anticipate seeing that change anymore. We're going to continue to see countries invest and advance the sport forward, and hopefully we'll be one of those that's pushing it forward too. Then nationally, so I'm almost jokingly thinking about this a little bit of like what hasn't changed since 2018 is probably a shorter list than what has changed. I think that all said, I think some things have changed for the better, some have changed for the worse. Of course, I think we're trying to see how do we keep advancing the sport here nationally forward, and willing to try things and see if they are indeed going to help move the sport forward. So I think all along the way, though, we've been focused on what's best for the athletes. How do we develop athletes, whether that's to be an Olympian, and I think this will hopefully ring through our conversation today, or just to be the best climber they can be. Those two, in my mind, go hand in hand. So, sometimes we talk about elite sport a lot, but that is a part of developing athletes to the best, right? We can't develop the best elite athletes if we don't develop all athletes to their best. So I think we've tried to stay focused on, what is that? In some cases, it's been to look at the youth pipeline. In some cases, it's been to adjust how national championship events are happening, just like we just did. But all along the way, it's been kind of focused on how do we improve the pipeline for athletes at all levels along the way. More recent kind of change is starting to see more youth training centers, right? Hearing more each, maybe not each day, but kind of more as the weeks pass of like, oh yeah, we're going to build a little youth training center across the street from the gym. And I think that's a sign of the times, right? There is a real tension between the kind of youth climbers in the gym and the commercial membership of the gym. And to me, it's a great opportunity and can be win-wins and hopefully ease some of that tension in the industry as well, while developing better youth climbers, because hopefully we can set a little bit more comp style and provide a little bit more coaching, all of the benefits there. So I think that's a great new addition that we're seeing pop up.
Kind of boggled my mind that it hasn't happened more, earlier. We've had ABC Kids for quite a while. We've had Team Texas for quite a while, and we've had tension between adult members and youths in climbing gyms for quite a while. And I don't want to get into what I think is going to come in the future, but I could see more of those. I want to get to the National Training Center because all our listeners want to hear that. But push it on that just a little bit. That is the pipeline. Like the youth become the athletes, and in what most elite sports, right? And so, I'm like, you said that you're like considering that and thinking about that changes to the national championship structure. And like, can you go in a little, is there anything more in depth that you can share with our listeners? Like, what are you considering as changes to, because there's a little bit of a perception that it is just about the elite athletes that are going to the Olympics. And we see a lot of the same names come through at the top tier. And I think there's people want to know, like, how are we making sure that we're refreshing that kind of stock of athletes? I hate to talk about it like that, but can you speak more about that pipeline and what you're doing to nurture it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can look at a number of ways. One, we have to grow that pipeline, right? Like and these are big questions without really easy answers, but they're things we think about every day, right? How do most of our kids today, mine included, how do they find climbing, right? In many cases, they find it via a birthday party at a commercial climbing gym, which we're psyched for, but that is a really small portion of the population. So how can we get climbing to more kids to get them more exposure? And I would use some of the other countries we visited in the world during the Tokyo Games. Hachioji was our host city fantastic hosts, amazing. They put us up during the games. In a couple of visits, we went and visited some of their elementary schools with the athletes and our coaching staff, and me as a side note. But what was awesome is going into these elementary schools and there's little climbing walls, right? Like, I don't know, can I say no surprise? Right? Like, no surprise Japan is so good. These kids are all getting exposed to the sport. Every one of them's getting exposed to the sport. U.S. has some real challenges in that regard. It's so big. How do we affect that kind of change in a country that's so big? But those are the things we're thinking about. How can we get more exposure, whether that's through school programs, whether that's through rec centers that ultimately drive more kids to the commercial climbing gym, to join the youth team, to grow bigger and even more youth teams that allows us to have an even bigger pipeline. That would be one piece, I would say. And then, separately, I think we always have to look at the pipeline itself. And we have a huge call out to those before me, right? The pipeline that's been in place all the way back in your days of kind of this youth series that's developed. We have one of the bigger youth series across the world with the most amount of events, and it's not perfect. And we need to constantly look at that and say, how can we make that pipeline better? I'd say some of the changes this year are some of those direct responses to constantly looking at it and say, how do we make the youth pipeline better? The idea of QE's, a Boulder season, for example, being an entire time, I think it was, and lead, right? The QE's being able to run from October to March, essentially now, and expanding the amount of time that kids can participate at the sport at the lower level. Maybe, hopefully, the intent is to have less pressure because it is a longer season. You miss one event or you don't perform in one event, it's not the end of the world. There's more. So trying to really expand out those entry-level events to our sport, I think it's going to be a huge benefit. Time will tell, and we'll probably still have to make some adjustments there. But that would be one example I'd give of many.
I'm curious, is there any thought of even kind of pushing lower? Like this, we've talked about in the past, like recreational series or like truly amateur. And I think it almost dovetails into something you just said about trying to get the schools to have, lots of, so I got teenagers. Every school that they've gone to has a climbing wall on the wall. We'll go into whatever parents' conference activity, will be in the gymnasium, big climbing wall. They don't use it. And I think there's a programming component to that, like getting to use it. And I wonder if there's this is way beyond what I thought we were going to talk about. But I just wonder if there's there's this pull and this nurturing that USA Climbing could have to like some sort of like nurture that really grassroots thing where and help them learn how to use their walls so that ultimately like. This is because there's a lot. There's only 800 climbing gyms in the United States. There's like tens of thousands of schools, 100,000 schools.
Yeah, I think it's a huge opportunity, and I think and kudos to the climbing wall industry and advances that are happening. I personally think that this is a great place for kind of standardized walls with the holds, much like the training boards, but a training board designed for elementary school kids. I think there's a great opportunity there that is right. To your point, and I see this myself at rec centers, right? They put in these really big climbing walls and then nobody's ever on them. And you're like, well, yeah, you don't do any route setting on it. Like nobody wants to be on that same route from 5 years ago that you put up that, you also... You actually didn't have a route setter even put up. You had a hold installer, I would say, put up, right? Not somebody that's trained on like how to make these things interesting and enjoyable. So I think that is a place where standardization comes in. We can do that from a centralized location, whether that's USA Climbing, whether that's some other entity that is like, we're going to give a whole bunch of new routes on a standardized wall or new problems on a standardized wall. I think don't have all the answers there, but I think there is an avenue there for significant growth in years to come.
All right. Well,
It's
that was a
exciting.
little sidebar. Yeah, climbing is such a good activity for kids and people and minds and bodies and souls that whatever helps get more people into it is good in my mind. All right, that wasn't really what I was planning to get into, but I think that was fun. If it's with your permission, I would love to dive into what is on a lot of people's minds in our industry is this National Training Center. I got some other questions. We'll see how long we talk about the National Training Center, but I know you're like smack in the middle of one of the hardest points. You've got a lot of support from the state and the city, and you got a site, but at the end of the day, you need to raise the funds, a portion of the funds. And so I know you're like neck deep in it right now. Is that okay if we pivot over to that?
In.
Yeah. Can you give us maybe just to start, like a little bit of a rundown? Like what is this thing? I think people have seen some pictures of it. Maybe they've seen some pictures of it. What are we getting in the National Training Center?
Yeah, well, we hope, right? I think first and foremost, it's a home for our elite athletes. And again, I'm going to use elite across youth, across adult, across para, a place for them to further develop and further, hone their skills to compete with the rest of the world. So it's a home for our athletes. It's a large scale event center. It looks, in my opinion, a lot less like a typical climbing gym and more like an event center. All right. So to be able to host our World Cups, World Championships, we've never hosted as an organization, as a national federation. We've never hosted adult World Championships. We need a space to be able to do that, a space that can hold 5,000-7,000 spectators outside, 1,500, 2,000 spectators inside, and a space that can do that with accessibility at the forefront, right? So that you're not necessarily needing to be on pads and those kinds of things in order to spectate for the events as well. And none of those should be taken as criticisms of commercial climbing gyms. They're fantastic. They need climbing wall terrain. We're not taking that approach because, again, that's not our focus. Our focus is how do we grow exposure and awareness for the sport? We do that with really big events. And then, how do we develop athletes? We do that with giving them a facility and terrain that is more competition style, that is harder, that is changed more frequently, those kinds of things. So that's how we would view kind of developing the athletes. Of course, it'll be our headquarters. That's a small piece. And then ultimately, yes, still open to the public so that the public can experience just the level of these elite athletes. But we'll be unapologetic in the fact that it is going to be a place that is hard and going to be a place that is more competition style.
I think you shared with me some schematics before. There's like a whole wing of it on the second floor, I think, that's like just focused for the team, like a boardroom. Is that right? Like and some like PT spaces and places that they can get other care and attention. So it's not a climbing gym. It's a lot more than that.
Yeah. You're 100% right. It's the third floor. On that side is a dedicated, national team development team space that'll have bouldering terrain, spray wall, but it'll also have the ancillary kind of services that we know are necessary to help develop the athletes, and whether that's mental health, whether that's nutrition, whether that's physical therapy, recovery, those are all in that space for the athletes to be able to access to hopefully, when they do get injured, we can get them back to climbing sooner. We can keep an eye on and help with nutrition, bring in clinics for those kinds of things. And again, those are things we will do at the national team level, but we can do with youth coming to the facility as well. Youth nationals, we can host clinics up in the nutrition space, or we can start to introduce physical therapy. I know as I was an athlete and you kind of along your journey and you go from like your youth days to elite, you kind of get all the stuff thrown at you, right? Like, hey, here's a sports psychologist and a nutritionist and a physical therapist. And like, what do I do with that stuff, right? As a kid, you don't have those things in many cases, not always, of course, but trying to think, how do we use the facility to help engage in those areas too? So
When did the vision first start? Was this something that was being batted around when you were hired, or is it kind of emerged since then? I know it's been in the works publicly since at least 23.
yeah, I'm trying to think. I should have did a little research as to when we kind of first went to the board with the idea. But yeah, to your point, it wasn't. I would say it wasn't something. Definitely wasn't something when I had first come on. That was like a fire hose of learning all things in the competition world. But I think it was evident, quickly in the first couple of years of like where we were missing opportunities as an organization. Again, whether that was at the elite side, I think that led at the very early days to the creation of our first small training center that was bouldering only here in Salt Lake City. The recognition that maybe we weren't we weren't providing everything the athletes needed to perform at their best. And I think it just kind of morphed over those first couple of years of recognizing where the challenges of the organization were from that side, the athlete development side, or the large scale events, and the challenges that we and, in all fairness, and the commercial climbing gyms were having with our biggest events. Some of those are quite large and extremely impactful.
It's been really interesting to watch this because, and you and I had been talking about this honestly for a year or two, and there's like two sides of it, and there's one side that's angry, so you hear a lot of noise from that side, but I think there's another side that is really also represents a significant piece, a significant share of our climber community, because at the end of the day, like, we're proud of our sport. We're proud of our athletes, and we've needed this. Like, I remember back in the day when we hadn't had a World Cup since the 1990. And it had been a long time. It's like, why can't we have a World Cup? It was like, well, all the other federations in Europe have this government backing, and they can pull off World Cups, and we can't. We just can't. And then we don't really have a facility. There's not really I remember seeing a couple gyms 20 years ago. It's like, oh, maybe we could have you might be able to squeeze a bouldering World Cup in here if you knocked out a wall or something. So we've needed this. This is like, on some levels, as a sport, to celebrate the sport and give ourselves this focus. And we've got medal winners, right? We're in the Olympics winning medals. We deserve a place like this for them. We deserve a place like this for the national community. And there's a ton of fans and also people in the industry that are really behind this, and think it's awesome. So before we talk about the hard stuff, I'll breathe some love. Like, it's not a one-sided thing. It's a two-sided thing, at least.
And you know what? I mean, we recognize that, right? We know, I think, and being here is just an opportunity to again, state, we recognize that. We're committed to working with the industry. I think we've been showing that more than ever, to find ways for it to be a win-win. We probably won't get everybody to agree. We're all different, and we all come from different perspectives, but we just want to share what it is we're trying to do and why and how it all fits together. And at the end of the day, we're going to have to show the community that that we're going to live up to the things we say about the facility and how it operates, and that we believe it will lift the industry as a whole. It will develop athletes better. It will be a resource for youth. But those are easy things to say. We're going to have to show the community that's the case, and I certainly look forward to hopefully being able to do that.
So and I think a lot of our listeners are aware of this. So there's the other side of this, and for years now, actually, there's been this pushback from a bunch of climbing gym owners, managers, and some of their staff too, which kind of points out the fact that having a commercial component in everybody's mind, it kind of equals a climbing gym. And if nothing else, it also it does directly impact on a competitive level the other facilities in the nearby area. And there's been a lot of pushback. There was just a recent, back in 2023, there was a letter that I think it was sent to you, signed by a bunch of gyms, kind of saying, "Hey, we're a little in the dark. Communication hasn't been great. We don't know what you're trying to do." And then fast forward to just a month ago or so, there's another letter, and they actually sent that to the city council, kind of jumping in front, because this project is something that is backed by the city. And there's you're taking possession and refurbishing, or that's not the right word, fixing up a piece of land that was been vacant and going to turn it into a city center. So there's a lot of, I think the nature of the pushback is that you're actually building a commercial gym, and it's going to be competitive, and that doesn't feel fair. And that feels like maybe a stretch for the organization. You've been dealing with this. How do you answer those concerns?
Yeah, I think and there is no easy answer to that. I wouldn't shy away from, right, we need a commercial component to underwrite the costs of running the facility. That said, I think we're not focused. You didn't hear me say earlier, and this is true in everything we've put out about the training center, that it is focused to maximize profit. It's focused to develop athletes, to host events, to drive those things, to have accessible space for our para athletes. Not on that list is to generate the maximum amount of profit. But we do need to find a way to pay for the facility's ongoing operating costs. So again, I think the challenge here is it's a commitment that we make to continue to work to operate the facility that way, under that kind of expectation, and then to work with the locally impacted gyms to ensure their success. I can't answer exactly what that looks like. We got to get the building built even to get to that point, but I do have some ideas in mind of how can we work with gyms in our community to ensure that they're successful while we are also operating a facility, achieving what it needs to achieve.
I mean, is there any future for this to happen without a commercial component?
Personally, I've just not seen a model that can support that. Right. And the funds we've received from the state and city are contingent on the public component. I think personally as well that it would just be a very big miss, right? For the next generation kids to be able to come into the facility, participate alongside their idols. I just saw this in Orlando, right? We were just in Orlando. Big call out to High Point for hosting us at national championships, and the kids walking in and like, there's Rabbitoo, and there's Nathaniel Coleman, and right there's these athletes they see and admire, and to be able to not just see them but to be able to climb with them. We inspire a new generation of athletes by allowing that to happen together. So I don't see that. And again, that's where I think our commitment is to minimize the need on the side of a commercial operation and work closely with our partners in town. So continue. And I know some of them, we'll push back on that. I again think we have to show them that we'll continue to be committed towards that.
I guess to be seen. You said you had a couple ideas. Would you be mind sharing some of the ideas? Because, I mean, again, that's I think that's the hang up, and we'll talk in a second. There's actually kind of another layer to that in these regional training centers that there's the discussion of, but how do you interface, and how do you take this nationally known, nationally recognized facility and funnel some support and funnel some energy down to the local gyms as well, and make sure that they're like part of the community? Is that how do you pull that off? Spitball.
Yeah, if I think a little bit outside of Salt Lake for a second, and was one of the items I was going to touch on a little bit earlier, right? I think, again, this idea of these kind of large scale event hosting. So from a World Cup, World Championship level, 7,000 spectators, broadcast TV, a big event and big broadcast. I think the more we can do to grow exposure for the sport, and that is difficult without a facility that can handle the sizes we're talking about. The more we can do to grow the exposure through broadcast helps lift the entire sport. It's not just I stumbled upon the climbing gym driving by, or I got invited to a birthday party, or someday I went through it in my elementary school. It's like, hey, I saw it on TV, right? And this was the idea behind ESPN a number of years ago, and that was a great, albeit sometimes expensive endeavor, but that was right up a sole focus, not to speak directly to the climbing community, but to speak to people that didn't know that this was an Olympic sport, and to see the amazing things the athletes are doing and say, hey, how do I find that? Was cool. I saw it on TV. How do I find that and hopefully get more people in the sport? Super difficult to measure those things. But I think that's how we lift the industry as a whole, by being able to bring that kind of exposure with these major events and major broadcast opportunities.
At the end of the day, to host these high level activities, you keep throwing out this 5,000, 7,000 number. I actually didn't know that's what that courtyard area is going to be able to host. That's amazing. I mean, there's no gym that's going to be built to accommodate that kind of crowd. And we see those kinds of crowds when we look at these, like the cutting edge facilities, like the Innsbruck facility in particular is one that gets noticed. But a lot of the World Cup venues, like they just are not built to be commercial gyms. A commercial gym will never have that kind of capacity. And so limiting our growth to commercial gyms on some levels, we're never going to be able to make that move until we have a facility like this. So
yeah, I agree, right? We're seeing in Chamonix, 10,000 spectators, KI and Innsbruck, like you say, also seeing that number. The last couple of years, we've needed to host in our current training center, which I would say, isn't the U.S. delivering a World Cup the way we want to. World Cups are really expensive, and it's what we needed to do to make it work. But those were 2,000, 2,500 spectator events. We were selling out literally in 20, 30 minutes tickets. Down in High Point this a few weeks ago, same thing. We'd release tickets; they were immediately sold out. We need that space and there is the demand in the U.S. To have that space. And I think one thing that comes up about the training center that would be good to share here is that doesn't mean that every event has to be at the training center, but it means we have a place that we can do those kinds of events. And when there's reasons to go outside of the training center and host a big national championship or host a World Cup, we can still do that. And we will still do that when those opportunities arise, and we can work, whether it's with the city or with commercial operators, on how to fund those big events and the expenses that go along with them.
Back to some of the concerns. Another piece of the concerns from the gyms has been just that it stretches the goals of USA Climbing. It kind of stretches your purpose to have a facility at all. Like the goal is to advance the sport, develop the athletes, and climbing gyms are like a facility is a tough thing to run. Especially we're finding more and more in the macroeconomic environment right now. And so, and I know this has been a long concern, and that's why you decided to take on a partner, a gym partner. And you took proposals. That was like a year or two ago. You took proposals, and I know, I think Touchstone and Momentum were like the finalists, and then decided to line with Momentum. And so, can you speak a little bit of what does that mean that they're going to be the partner? How does that play out in the facility, almost on a day-to-day basis? And and then maybe follow up after that.
Yeah, I think it's another great question. No surprise, Scott. Right. I think, we did listen to many of the many of the comments or feedback we received originally in that original letter was that, yeah, USA Climbing shouldn't do this. It's more difficult than we anticipate. We should consider, somebody operating the facility. I won't shy away. It still had we still don't think it should be open to the public. But if it is, we think USA Climbing shouldn't be the operator of the facility. So we listened to that feedback. Did do the request for interest, 7 facilities from all over the country. We opened that, across the country for anyone to apply. 7 facilities submitted interest, as you touched on. We advanced Momentum and Touchstone as kind of finalists to look at. And I will say the proposals, even across all 7, were great. They were amazing. They had great. Each had their own great components to them. They all did maintain a public component of the facility, again with a partner operating the facility, and it was at the end of the day a tougher decision than probably anticipated, and it did include gym owners. It included some board members, of course, some staff, kind of saying, okay, here's our proposals, and really what's the best path forward for the organization. And I just have to say, as you touched on Touchstone, it was great personally for me, just to get to know the Touchstone crew. We went and spent some time out in California, got to understand the operation a little bit more. We've been, of course, running events with Touchstone for a long, long time, but to get to know a little bit more of what they're doing, I just have to call them out as I'm an admirer of what they've done. What they've accomplished is very impressive. I consider them now friends, even still with them signing the current letter. So, that said, I think so. We took that feedback. We selected Momentum at the end of the day. The way we view the operating agreement or operating partnership of that facility, or of the partnership, really is us kind of outlining how we want the facility to run. Everything we've been talking about already today, right? Which is, hey, we must have harder routes and boulders, must be more comp style. We're going to host training camps and events to develop athletes. So it's not how you would typically operate, or at least from the outside, how you would typically operate a commercial climbing gym. And then once we kind of agree on that operating model, USA Climbing will fund that for Momentum and have some sort of incentive and fee for them operating the facility in kind of the way that we're envisioning it. So again, I would reiterate, that won't be operate the facility to maximize profit, right? That'll be operate the facility to develop our athletes and para-athletes and host these events and training camps and those kinds of things.
But also the bills have to get paid. Yep, no doubt. Yeah. And I think that's ultimately what it comes down to, that people are concerned about is, we know it's a tough business, and at the end of the day, the bills got to get paid. And if there's this commercial component, that I think you'll feel the same pressures that any commercial gym will feel when you got to pay the bills, you figure out how to get more people into the facility and how to charge more for that. And it seems like it's just gonna be a part of this facility. If this facility happens, there's no way that doesn't happen. And I'm kind of a fan of the idea. I'm a fan of our industry. I hear the pushback, and some of the things you just said too. I can see there's a pushback because like all the high end camps and the comp styles and the hard climbing, that's a level of the clientele that a lot of gyms really aspire to. Like, that's the clientele we're trying to serve. We want to serve the people that are serious about it, that get into it hard, and, are lifelong members and progress. And I think that almost names the fundamental, one of the fundamental conflicts. And I just, I don't know. It doesn't, I don't hear a great way to resolve that, honestly. And I'm not trying to like poke you that way. It seems like one of the points you made earlier, and I'm kind of riffing here. One of the points you made earlier is that if we have this facility, we can promote the sport more widely. And this rising tide lifts all ships. And I'll say, as someone that's been in the industry for 30 years, actually, I really truly believe that. And that's the answer that I have when anybody in our industry is facing new competition in their market. Sometimes they'll reach out to CBJ and they'll look for resources or ideas or look for consultants. And it's like, yeah, don't worry too much. It'll be okay. It'll be okay. But also there's a couple of years of some pain, actually. And there is a moment where you feel that impact of the new gym that opened in town. And I don't know if that's unavoidable. So maybe you got to get to be really good friends. Touchstone's in California. Maybe you got to really try to get on a really good friendly basis with all the Salt Lake City gyms, because if you could weather that like painful moment that happens in every market when the new facility opens up, maybe there is a really bright horizon, because all of that brand of climbing exposure and TV and broadcast, like it'll all be centered in Salt Lake. It'll help hopefully nationwide. And I'd like to hear your ideas on how that can help, the gym in a small market. But certainly that'll focus on Salt Lake, and it'll just even rise further. But yeah, I don't know.
There's no right, as you say, there's no easy answers to that. But again, how I would shape it is, not the focus of the facility is right. We're trying to remove those things that would make that the focus of the facility, right? We're going to fundraise for this facility so that we can go into the project with no debt service, right? We've negotiated with the city for a ground lease that minimizes our exposure on that side as well, so that we don't have, and I know some find that unfair. But we are the national governing body, right? There is an allure and an excitement around the national governing body that allows us to capitalize on getting better rent or fundraising for the facility that recognize would be harder for other facilities. But that also then goes right back to that point of it doesn't have to operate focused on membership and focused on public revenue. It needs it, of course, but it doesn't need it to the same level that other facilities would need it. So again, that's how I think we work in the community, and I still think there is in the market ways to work together to minimize those impacts. But we are also a really fast growing city. 5,000 new units are being built in the downtown core where we are in the next few years. So that, along with just the Salt Lake metro area as a whole, north, south, east, and west, is continuing to be one of the faster growing major metropolitan areas in the U.S. Those are all areas where I think it doesn't, I'm not trying to minimize those impacts, but ways with which we can minimize those impacts. So.
It's rising tide. It's easy. And it's true. And we like to point to that. Yeah, but what you say, and all of this is like a double-edged sword. There's two sides to all this thing. Part of me, like, back to we haven't had this kind of facility, we haven't had these kind of events because we don't have government funding. And you said at the very beginning, U.S. The country just doesn't support sport in the same way you find with a bunch of other countries. But you found this way to get the state and the city to fund it, and I think that's awesome. But also part of the pushback is that it doesn't feel fair. These incumbent gyms, not only is it difficult when the new facility opens up, there's this specter. It's kind of two specters that it feels unfair about. is, hey, they got government money, they got easy money, they're a nonprofit, they can get fundraising. That doesn't feel fair to me as a, I had to raise my own money and I had to pay market rate for my real estate, and that doesn't feel fair. And then there's another component to it that USA Climbing, you exist on the backs. That's like a negative way to say that. You exist because of the generosity on a lot of levels and a lot of the goodwill of the greater climbing industry and the gyms. Like most of them don't make much money when they host an event, but they do it for the kids. They do it for the sport. And so there's this, oh, it doesn't feel fair to take government money. Doesn't feel fair to use a nonprofit and have all this bank of volunteerism that built us, and now we're going to face you as a competitor in the space. And I think this is, and I'm really not trying to hit hard. I don't think there's an answer to this, honestly. I think you have to get it open, finish your fundraising, get it open and see it, and act with goodwill with your neighbors and be friendly with everybody. And like you said, it skews hard. Cool. Maybe there's a big sign on the wall. It's like, hey, you want to get into climbing? Go check out these guys that are down the street, these facilities down the street. Like I think there's some direct ties to in marketing in that space that you can support each other. But the piece that I'll bring up now and is also this regional training centers. Maybe
before we jump there, Scott, I think it's good. I mean, I think this is great conversation, right? And I think it's like you say, there are no easy answers. They are double-edged swords. I mean, we might make one happy while making someone else unhappy, right? But again, on those on the event side, I think we're trying to take away those really takeaways. Maybe not the right word there, but for lack of better words, right, take away those challenging events where not only does the gym lose money on our really big events, our national championship events, where the impact can be quite significant. We recognize that. We've been trying to adjust formats, leave gyms more open, all of those things to address some of that. But if we have this facility, those events can come over to the facility where those more costly events to the gym and more impactful to the membership, that they don't have to be there. Yet the other events, we've been increasing the amount we pay in site fees, whether it's for regionals or divisionals, and right. So just as a number, just to give a sense of what does that really look like, it really comes from our last impact report. So this isn't anything new, right? But in 2024, USA Climbing paid via host fees to climbing gyms $3.52 million. We expect that to creep up probably pretty close to $3.9 million a year. I'll be the first to say we want to keep pushing that up. It's expensive for the gyms. We wouldn't exist without commercial climbing gyms. Our sport starts there. Youth programs are there. We still get to host events there. They are critical, if not the most critical cog in the chain. We recognize that, and we keep trying to push, whether it's the exposure like we were talking about, whether it's site fees to help offset some of the costs of those events, to help everybody. And I see this as a way to help do that.
And before we move on to bigger, I think funner topics on some levels, but there is this one more layer, and it wasn't even in anybody's perspective. It wasn't considered until you rolled out your strategic plan back in the fall for these years leading up to the Olympics, and this regional training center concept. So suddenly also there was all this pushback and concern of, oh, they're a nonprofit and, oh, they're going to compete. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, they're going to do that all across the country, perhaps. And then also being partnered with and I don't know how you would have been partnered with any gym chain that wasn't multi-market. Some levels I see that pushback. I was like, well, if you worked with Touchstone, they're multi-market too. If you worked with whoever you worked with, but there's this specter now as like, oh, is there an alignment? And are we going to face competition now? This thing that might happen in Salt Lake, is that going to bleed out into these other markets? And it's kind of got the industry spooked a little bit. And I don't know. What do you say to that? I'm sure you can't like write a manifesto or a promise right now. Like you're in the middle of, you haven't even raised the money to build the first one. And I know, you want to do good by the community, but what could you say to this concern that
well, I can write some commitments. I can write some commitments here, right? I think this has probably been a place that has been greatly misunderstood. The idea of regional training centers first was born, out of the idea of how do we recognize gyms all over the country, not a multi-level chain, or a multi-state chain, not tied to any one operator, and came from some feedback from gym owners of like, hey, like we really support comp climbing. We've had a youth team forever. We hire the best coaches. We institute safe sport policies, not just at the bare level. We do it across the whole facility. So it was like a response to some gyms coming to us and saying, hey, like we want to be recognized for this. And what could that look like? And that's where the idea kind of was born out of, was to really say to those gyms like, hey, yeah, it's like a little stamp of certification, right? It is not, and I'll be 100% clear here, probably want to say it like a few times, it is not USA Climbing going into other markets and opening climbing gyms. We are not doing that. That's not the intention here. It was, again, to recognize those that are doing great things out there. Now, I'll say some have come forward recently and saying like, hey, like how do you think about that as a small gym in my market, whatever market, right? How do you think about that? If that big gym, which I already have a hard time competing with, gets that certification, does that make it harder for me to even compete with them? A great point, right? So I think we're still engaged and listening and trying to find like, how do we recognize those that are doing good work without having a negative consequence to that in a market with other gyms that maybe they're doing good work or different work. No easy answers as always. But I just reiterate again that it's not USA Climbing aligning with Momentum as our partner, to do this across the country. Not at all. It's trying to recognize gyms doing great things. And if we can't find a way to do that the industry is supportive of, maybe that's something we're not going to do. I think it'd be a missed opportunity because it just is recognition. Maybe there's other ways to recognition. We talked about this the other day that maybe the idea of regional training center, maybe even that sounds maybe different. Maybe it's regional training partners, and maybe there's levels within that partnership, right? That says, hey, yeah, small gym, you're a small bouldering only gym. We're going to recognize you as a small bouldering only gym if you're hiring good coaches and you've got high level route setting and you're hosting USA Climbing events. I don't see a challenge with that. It just needs, engagement, conversation, and hopefully through this, an understanding that this isn't USA Climbing coming in to really do something that is never what we intended.
Like an accreditation, really, is what I'm hearing. The idea that it's almost just taking, you even mentioned it, like you have some certified coaches, you have some certified route setters, you've proven that you can host a good event with us a couple times, and now you have the USA Climbing stamp of approval. We're
yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. CWA has shades of that kind of work. All right. Let's move over to something else. Is that okay? I got to ask a lot more questions, but I think you've done a good job of kind of addressing some of the points. And it's just we're in the middle space right now where it's and again, you need to finish the fundraising. This might be a pipe dream unless you can finish the fundraising. So
exactly.
Hopefully. I'd like to see a facility. I hope we can have this place that has 6,000 competitors or 6,000 spectators. Speaking of 6,000 spectators, we got this thing called the Olympics that's coming to, I'm going to say coming to town as in the sense that it's coming to the U.S. It's going to be just down the street in L.A. In a couple of years. We finally have 3 medals. Everybody that really loves competition is like, finally, all of the specialists get their own medals. It feels like to me, it feels like the first right Olympic Games anyways. Like this is the way we should have started it. But it's on our home turf. And I'm curious, like, what does that mean to USA Climbing? How much is it just, are you part of that conversation? Have you been out to LA? What role do you play in hosting the Olympics here in this country?
Yeah, and let's not forget it's our Paralympic debut as well. Massive win for climbing worldwide. I think it's a huge opportunity. A huge opportunity to expose the sport, more widely across the country. A huge opportunity to showcase the sport, in Southern California. It's going to be a great opportunity for us. We've made a really intentional effort over the years to get more involved, and I would say this is definitely a shift the organization has made intentionally to get involved with World Climbing, and now LA28. To me, these actions are really important, right? We have members on almost every commission at World Climbing. We've got an executive board member. Not to say that we know how to run the sport, right? There's 100 and it changes occasionally, 100 plus national federations all over the world, but to be a part of helping grow the sport. And I would say that's not a place USA Climbing was always active. It's a place I'm very proud of what we're doing in that space now to help shape with our friends all over the world of how do we grow this sport. And then in LA, as you touched on, how do we want to showcase the sport in LA? And what does that look like? We don't have, of course, we don't have final say. That's the LA28 organizing committee and World Climbing. But we are in the room having conversations about what would we like to do and how can we help support that. Some ways and the membership or the community as a whole should have seen some of these, right? We've shared information about how to get involved, how to volunteer for the LA Games. These are our games, all of us, right? Get involved. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to participate in the organization, even if that's volunteering at the venue, or to help, with some more of the organizational side of the games. We supported getting an American as the sport manager for the event and the games, again, with LA28 and World Climbing, with our friends at both of those organizations, just so we had the opportunity to experience, and again, I'm using we in the broadest term possible there, so that we had the opportunity to experience the games. It's really special. I can say from my time in 2002, being here in Salt Lake when the games came here, it was truly special, and a truly special time. And the only way you can take advantage of that is to get involved. So we're doing a lot of things behind the scenes. We hosted officials IFS World Climbing. That's a really hard one to break that habit. World Climbing official seminar just a couple of months ago, solely for the focus of getting more officials, judges, route setters into the World Climbing certification system in hopes that we could advance them along, that they could have a role in the LA Games. So I think it's doing those kinds of things, day in and day out to try and affect how the sport is showcased during the games. We've invited LA28 out to World Cup events. They've come out to World Cups. They've come out to paraclimbing World Cups. Showcase, like, man, this is an awesome sport. Give us the best spot. Of course, we're fighting for that. Everybody is. Give us the best venue and the best location, and give us more athletes. Give us the 3 medals. Include paraclimbing. I think the sport speaks for itself, but I would like to think we've had at least some influence in helping some of those things get across the line.
Yeah, I love that you brought in the support teams, because anybody that is listening that runs competitions on the QE level or whatever, like these don't happen like without this crew of volunteer support. So I think on an individual level, I think that's awesome. Like an invitation to get involved, just like you might go down the street to belay at your local gym with the QE. Would be really cool to be on the back end. I'm sure there's a lot of red tape to cut through.
Yeah.
But that's like on an individual level. I'm curious what you have to say. And you kind of talked about it. Just if you have any like concrete ideas like this. So this is our third one, and building up to it and after it in the gym community, there's always been this talk about like, whoa, did you see an uptick because we had the Olympic Games? Like, oh, did that mean more waivers and foot traffic and day passes were up, or did you see a membership uptick, or what was the effect of it on the market? And usually the answers have been kind of yeah, like there's some people came in. I think climbing.com did a survey of their website, or maybe it was a Google thing, and there was a lot of search traffic. There was certainly a whole lot of what is climbing search traffic. And then there's the visibility through, the Olympics themselves. But I'm curious how we can parlay that. It's almost the same question as like, oh, you're going to build a national training center. How do we parlay that into excitement on the ground and foot traffic to new gyms? Like, how do we really leverage these opportunities? And I'm just curious if you have any concrete ideas, and they could be like things that you're doing or could do, or tips you have to a gym. I mean,
let's be fair, right? We want to drive, we want to drive new climbers to gyms all over the country. I mean, the training center is going to have very little impact on that. We want, hopefully, through the messaging for people to again say, oh, it's an Olympic sport, I didn't know that, or oh, that looked cool, or hey, this sport, I didn't recognize it. There's a para component to it. Where do I go find it? And to give you credit where credit is due, right? Your gym finder is amazing. How do we leverage those kinds of things? And I would say that's a place we have to do together. Our comms team is a team of two. There's amazing talent, CBJ, CWA, the marketing professionals at all of these commercial climbing gyms around the country. How do we together identify what are the things that will hopefully move the needle in regards to that, and get people to find those gyms where they are and start? I'd say we don't have all the answers to that, but we are eager to begin discussions, again, broadly with the marketing comms professionals across the industry to see what are the things that will move it. We'll do, of course, like how to watch. Here's the Olympians, their hometowns, where they started training, those kinds of things. But what are the kind of more call to action things that we can also get in there? I'd say what'll be different. Tokyo, we had 13-hour, well, it depends, of course, which time zone you're in the country, but pretty significant time zone change. COVID games as well wasn't the greatest for kind of our debut, probably the least ideal scenario you could find yourself debuting as an Olympic sport in. Paris definitely was better, was an amazing games. Still has that 8-hour time change. We are competing, climbing, with all of the other summer federations for broadcast time on NBC. So, we need performance. There's no doubt. I won't hide from that. Americans love to watch medalists and see them medal, and you don't tend to get broadcast time if you're not doing that. So, hopefully we're positioning the athletes to do what they need to do. And then we're positioning, already in conversations with NBC to educate them of like, who are the athletes and what should they expect? And hey, can you air us? Will you air us? Again, everybody's doing this, but these are the things you have to do. And we'll keep doing those things through the games time, of course. Facilitate, news media where we can, and local audiences, hype up the fact that an Olympian might be in your community. We're doing there's so many options to think of. But I think it really is a team effort. And at the end of the day, the gyms are going to have to do some of that, right? Like, hey, here's how to watch. Or, hey, this athlete's in town, come see them, come sign autographs, whatever it might be too.
Yeah, I think it's, I do some marketing sometimes. It feels like a lot of that is like the hook to get them in. Oh, athlete's going to be in your neighborhood, or learn more about them, or watch them, or it feels like maybe there's an initiative. I didn't have this plan in our conversation, but maybe there's an initiative that like just throughout all of the players that are going to have this exposure, the athletes, the commentators, signage when you can, but there's this call to action is like, go climbing. Like, yes, learn about it, get inspired, but like deliberately, because I say in marketing, sometimes you can lead them through the arguments, but if you don't give them that call to action at the end, they didn't click, they didn't do the thing, right? And so maybe I'm thinking that's what we need to do as an industry, is like, that's our call to action. You are inspired, you love this, go find a gym near you. Exactly. That's the call to action. Go find a gym, get climbing, try climbing. Yep. This could be you. This could be your kids. This could be your grandkids.
Yep, 1,000%. And we're all in for that, right? I think again, it's hard for us to do that for everybody, but to do it with the industry, absolutely. And that's a huge win for everybody, honestly. And then, so I think that's one on a kind of related, just in terms of, again, how do we raise awareness leading into the games? Yeah, we're looking, how do we raise the profile of the World Cups that we've hosted in the U.S. over the next couple of years? I can't spill too many secrets there yet, other than to say we are going to raise the profile of World Cups here in the U.S. So it's overdue. It'll be challenging. It comes with financial commitments to raise those, to raise the level of the events, but in very short order, you'll be hearing more from us on the 2026 World Cup edition, which is not that far out, but also what are we thinking about for 2027, including what I hope will be bringing Lead World Cup back to the United States for the first time since 2012. Long overdue. So again, it's kind of what are the things we can be doing, in all the various areas to drive awareness of it, to have the hook for people to come climbing. Absolutely think that's a great idea. To integrate the CBJ gym finder of this is how easy it is to find a gym in your community. There is one in almost every community across the country. Go to it. We absolutely want that.
Yeah. Thanks for the plug. That was the goal, but it's an interesting time. I think there's a lot of power, and I think as an industry, we've found that we're maturing in all of these ways, like professional on the gym side, as a career. Like that's a big push for the last 5-10 years. Like become professional and get your certifications and do professional education. And I think as an industry, I think we taking the messaging seriously is maybe an opportunity. I'm going to come back. I think I hit on something. I might push on that more. It's like just like making sure that we say, go find climbing, go try it. I
appreciate that. Right. Again, we're broadcasting events. We have commercials on these events all the time, right? We could collectively, on behalf of the industry, create a commercial that is go find your climbing gym, right?
The got milk commercial for climbing. Go climbing. Got climbing.
Yeah, I think it'd be awesome. And those things are hard to measure, of course, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't do them. And we'll be present at the CWA Summit. This is one of the topics that I'll be talking about, and hopefully we'll be encouraging some folks to come share their ideas of what might be some good ways to get people activating around the games and growing that exposure.
I think it's time to whiteboard that stuff. Like get some tactics. But
I love a good whiteboard.
yeah, let's beat this up. How do we leverage exposure, leverage athletes, leverage events? How do we do that to grow the sport? Because I won't go hard, but it's a tough business right now. The macroeconomics aren't great. There's if you run a climbing gym, I guarantee you are thinking about how do I get more foot traffic, and these opportunities, things like National Training Center, things like the Olympics. If we can figure out how to harness them for the greater good, rise that tide as fast as we can, you're going to make a lot of fans out of that. So, well, I had plenty of other things that we could have talked about, but I think we covered a lot. Before we wrap up, is there anything that you want to make sure that we said? Is there a topic that you want to go into? I got some more time, but is there something?
Yeah, and I have all the time in the world. Yeah, I think one other thing on LA, and we touched briefly on it, right? But what an amazing opportunity. And I've been saying this everywhere I go, that paraclimbing's debut on the LA program is going to be incredible. The athletes are incredible. The world is going to see it. We're the only new para sport on the para program. I'm super excited for what that entails and how hopefully gyms around the country can embrace that going forward as well. I do believe that we are going to get just an amazing amount of awareness because we are the sole new sport, and because when somebody sees these athletes doing their thing, they're going to be amazed. It does just show so well how talented they are. So a huge call out. I don't want to put any more pressure on our para athletes to go win a bunch of medals. But it's going to be an amazing opportunity to capitalize, not just during the Olympic Games timeframe, but also during the Paralympic Games timeframe.
Yeah, it's been fantastic to watch that rise. And I think that back to the gym scene. I think there's a lot of gyms that have gotten into creating adapt spaces and having the equipment and trying to cater to the adaptive clientele and I think it's really been rewarding. And it could be a small profit center. Like if you do it right, there's their customers, and this is an incredibly uplifting activity if they find it and it's good fit for them. Fantastic. Well, okay. Yeah. Anything else any shout outs before we wrap up?
Oh boy, it just wouldn't be, wouldn't always take the opportunity. And you mentioned it earlier, right? That the sport doesn't run without an enormous amount of volunteers, regional coordinators, divisional coordinators, national coordinators, judges, belayers, climbing gyms, a dedicated staff here. Just have to call out to all of them for all of their efforts in making our sport run every day all over the country. It's amazing, and we absolutely could not do it without them. So I have to make that call out every time I can.
That's fantastic. Especially, there's a lot of people that give like a day here and there, a day there, but those coordinators, oh my gosh, they
we ask way too much of them. There is no doubt. They do an amazing amount of work often, at all hours of the night. Sometimes our kids are no longer competing in the sport and they just still love the sport. And I mean, it's just the community is really special. I've always said that about the climbing community. That's not been the case in every sport I've been in, but the climbing community is special. It's a privilege to be a part of it, and folks like the regional coordinators, divisional coordinators, again, all of the belayers, route setters, that they all are what make the community what it is, and it's just great to be a part of.
Climbing, it is a true community, and
it is.
Well, Marc, thanks for spending an hour and a half with me. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for letting me ask a couple hard questions, and best of luck as you're raising funds for the training center and getting ready for CWA and the Olympics. I know we all want our sport to succeed and the athletes to succeed. So thank you for doing the work you do.
Well, Yeah, thanks for the time, and thanks for the questions, even the hard ones. I think it's good to be open and answer all the questions that are out there. So I appreciate the time to be able to do that.
Hey, thanks for sitting in that. It was fun to talk with Marc about the Olympics and the National Training Center and hear some of his personal perspectives. So, if you liked that, make sure you like and subscribe and follow us. We're on YouTube, we're on Instagram, we're on LinkedIn. Of course, find us at climbingbusinessjournal.com and subscribe to our newsletters. Our Thursday morning insider is a great one that keep you informed with what's happening in the industry. So thanks. We'll see you next time.